Now, at the Vilnius conference, I was a bit confused because here's Rishi and Alex, he was speaking to Mark Rutte, and so I was a bit surprised by that. Why is he there representing the Netherlands? I thought something had changed.
Yes, allegedly Brexit, but then on one of my regular jaunts to Brussels the other day, I was speaking to a young civil servant of the Dutch Ministry of Defence who said, you British are so regretful that you've left the European Union and you can't participate in PESCO, the European Union military unification projects, but you're trying to get there bilaterally through the back door. So that might be a QED of that. But Rutte's out on his ear, as we're about to see after that. So we don't have time to cover the whole collapse of the Dutch government, but we cannot mention it, cannot leave it without mention. So these will be in the show notes. People can use machine translation software to translate the links that they'll find there. But NRC Handelsblad, a bit like the Financial Times, reports that the problem, the straw that broke the camel's back in this four-party coalition and caused it to fall, was that a smaller member of the coalition, the Christen Unie, absolutely refused to limit the numbers of people brought to the Netherlands on family reunification visas after the asylum case of a relative had been granted. This against the will of the larger parties that represent secular business interests, in the case of Rutte's own party, or light, nominally Christian interests, the Christian Democrats. So the opposition came from what we'll see on screen now, Christen Unie, representing the evangelical Protestants, not the Reformed Protestants. There's a bit fine difference, but a huge difference in politics here. So Christen Unie here has a blog from their member of Parliament, Mr. Seder, Don Seder, as far back as February. And Christen Unie there, through the person of their member of Parliament, saying, we absolutely cannot postpone family reunification. This was from February. This has been bubbling under the surface for months. And here, rather surprisingly, Mr. Seder says that judges would throw out the measure, probably correct, actually, to give him his due. He knew that Dutch courts would say, no, family reunification is an absolute right. You cannot delay the timing or reduce the numbers of those who are coming to join family members who've been given asylum. Here, another piece which people can find by going to the show notes and using a translation software application. We see here that a representative of the Christen Unie party, which has gone far left now, far further than you expect from a party of the name Christian, Nathaniel Post, who leads their youth wing, says here in a tense dialogue with a representative of the former coalition partner, the VVD, Rutte's party, which have now fallen out. He says, we couldn't carry on muddling through like this. We don't think there's any need to reduce migration. They opposed the idea from the bigger parties that there would be A and B category immigrants or refugees, where category A was fleeing persecution for their sexuality and category B was fleeing war zones, and the latter would have restrictions on family reunifications. And this causes even Ferry von Weinen, who's the representative of the governing VVD party, to say, I don't know what you're talking about. Everyone knows you can't get a place in school or hospital because of this. The consequence, as reported by Het Parool, along with all the other newspapers, is that Mark Rutte is leaving politics, finally. He's been in governing the country for 13 years through 4 coalitions, but the last of them, really, the unprecedented split here was that finally the smaller Christian party, not the most conservative one, but has gone so far left that it was joining D66, the very radical anti-religion party, in saying we absolutely must have as many migrants and refugees, particularly refugees, as turn up on our shores and their relatives. They've got human rights to bring their families with them, anyone under 25 who's associated with them closely. Just to cover the farmers en passant as well, Europe Reloaded was one of the several sites that covered and then retracted this idea that there'd been a state of emergency declared in The Hague last week. For the umpteenth time in the last 2 years, there was a mass descent of tractors upon the central Hague area to protest in front of Parliament. What was actually the truth of the matter was it was a noodbevel, an emergency order from the mayor to clear the area around Parliament and stop the tractors coming towards Parliament. Not a state of emergency, but sadly the farmers, they're just getting ignored now, and it was not them that caused the government to fall. Their well-known woes was not the problem, it was immigration. And people wanting to know more on Dutch farmers in general, I would point them to this piece written by a deep specialist in agricultural policy and health, on the very excellent Brownstone Institute website called The Future of Traditional Farming and Healthcare in the Netherlands. Here you get a bundle altogether of what's being done to Dutch farming and how corporate interests have completely taken over the country, particularly in its agriculture.
So are you saying, Alex, that the Dutch farming issue had no impact on the fall of the government?
Sadly, that is the case, because the urbanized and more left-leaning half of the country, including a lot of the Christians who are I keep going on about religion in Dutch politics because it's important, much more important than in other Western European countries. The whole left-leaning and urban section of society has determined that farming has to change, probably has to be reduced, some would say to zero, and they have very little sympathy indeed for growing farmer suicides in the Netherlands.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you for that. Now, Debbie, let's come back to you.